We have survived the truth, Alex O'Neill.
Yes, Mike Burgess, we lived.
We lived, that's right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Irrational Passions review discussion. And this time it's for the latest Destiny 2 expansion, The Witch Queen. That's right. If you've not seen enough Destiny content on this channel, it's more.
We got more.
We got more. And we'll talk about even more of that at the end of this video as well. But right now, we're just gonna do our usual review discussion thing and talk about kind of what we've thought about playing through the expansion and like all the seasonal content. There's just been so much Destiny stuff that has released like in the last couple weeks. The huge expansion. Of course, there's all these other bells and whistles. The big campaign. We had the raid. Just this past weekend. There's a whole bunch of stuff that it's even hard to figure out where to even start, Alex.
My thing was because it is shorter. I think you and I are both like very positive on this for the most part.
Yes.
So I was thinking to start with the kind of negatives.
Yeah, just get them out of the way.
Just get them out of the way, and I think there are reasonable things to be critical of for sure.
Yeah.
Like the big one, if you were jumping into this and listening and you are like, let's say a lapsed Destiny fan or someone who's just trying to get into it, like one of the things is like, hey, we still have that approachability problem with Destiny.
Yeah, it's I think it's like in some ways becoming wider and wider for like, it's like for good and bad reasons, right? Because I think a lot of it is because Destiny's been going, you include the first game, it's been going for 7 years. I mean, and then the Destiny 2, of course, has been for, over 5 years, and we're in year 5. And I think...
And it's a different game than it was.
It's a completely different game. Like, I think it has that kind of... I think there's still circles in the video game world who follow games closely who still think of Destiny as that, like, it's like a weird campaign shooter that, like, they put out this weird expansion every year and it's like a fun romp through a campaign, and then you kind of can just leave. Like, I feel like that's, what a lot of people just felt what Destiny was for a while. And I think they really have turned coat, where I feel very comfortable just calling Destiny an MMO now. Like, it just is an MMO now. That comes with those trappings of, like, if you want to be in the know of like how this stuff works, you just kind of have to jump in and figure it out, or
suffer for a while.
Figure it out and like learn systems that are in other MMOs, or like find friends that are already into it and have them help you through stuff. Or, look up YouTube videos on like, not just like guides of how to play the game, but like lore and world building stuff in the game, because it's just been going on for so long. And like, they can't, I feel for them, because I understand like there are aspects in the game, even as a longtime player, I think they could be better about sharing with like what like the world of Destiny and all these kind of things. But also there's just so much of it that like they can't get everything. They just can't. Because it's been going for so long, and there's like so many stories that were either on these Grimoire cards in the first game, or parts of stories that were actually in the game but not really that much, or like these few dialogue lines that you found from like scanning this thing on a planet somewhere like 3 years ago that now are like major plot points now. Like, it's just, there's just so much of it now, and like I think it's just that it is the reality of Destiny. But man, like, this expand, like, just I guess like a broad thing of, again, with like, not make it all complaints, even though we still have more criticisms. Like, I think this expansion, on the other end of it being unapproachable, is the best expansion as a fan has like seen for the entirety history of Destiny, for like a person who's been in it and like getting deeper and deeper into it in these recent years. For various reasons, like, this has been the best it's like ever been, in so many 100%. Facets. So
it's one of those things, like playing the campaign, and you and I and our friend Ren played it, as like a group, and it was absolutely incredible. We'll get into it later, and I had a great time, but like, it's clearly a campaign for Destiny fans.
Yeah.
And as a fan of Destiny, I wouldn't want it any other way. But I also recognize that, like, you're like, if you're coming into it and you're like, I think I know who Savathun is. Like, I think I remember that.
Not really. Like,
it would be very difficult to jump into the campaign if you hadn't played like Season of the Lost, even like that most recent season that happened, like the last season of Beyond Lights expansion. And that's gone now. You know, it's gone forever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It will never come back. And I understand like the necessity of having to do that to make room for new stuff. And they made a lot of room, and they've already filled a good bit of that room with a ton of new stuff. But it is one of those things of like, we had 7 weeks of like meeting and talking to Savathun directly, and that had a huge impact on how I felt about her playing through this campaign.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, people are just, they missed it.
They missed it. It's gone. And that's the nature of this game being like an ongoing game. It had, you know, like you said, it has that challenging aspect of like they vault some of the seasonal stuff every so often, just because they add a lot. And like the seasonal offerings have become like more and more substantial, in terms of like so many things of like different gameplay elements, different are introducing new gameplay elements, but also introducing like major story moments like this, like you said, like having this whole season of Savathun encased in a crystal, and she's talking to us every week, and like, you know, you can see her sowing these seeds in other characters that we interact with in the campaign now, and like even outside of the campaign and the seasonal stuff, like that stuff all still lingers. And having that knowledge like makes so many more things in the campaign of this. But I like even just like beat for beat, just like reading some dialogue that's like, you know, or having some random one-off dialogue interaction with a character, or reading some piece of lore that's in the game. Like so much of it is enriched now by both sides of like the storytelling stuff they do in the game. And like,
and it's great.
It's fantastic for like some,
it's
like,
just, you got to be there. You know?
It is, you kind of have to be there. And I think that's just the nature of MMOs. Like as much as I play this game and like know all these systems, and I'm like, oh yeah, all these things like make sense to me because I've been playing for so long. Like I still can look at some other MMOs and be like, I have no idea what's going on in these things, and this seems like so much work. So I understand even from that perspective, like why it's tough to like get new people or like people to come back, because the game is transformed in so many ways and keeps transforming.
And I'll say, like, I've not played a lot of MMOs. I've now played most of Final Fantasy 14, and it has given me a lot of perspective. Like, I am very grateful to FF14. I have not like finished Endwalker. I kind of got into it and then got very burnt out and had to take a break. But I appreciate that, you know, all of that game is still in that game. Like none of it has been like ripped out or gutted by any means.
Right.
Like some quests have been like trimmed down to make it easier in that original Realm Reborn stuff. But also the trade-off with that is I played 270 hours of that game to get to Endwalker,
to get to
right?
Endwalker,
and that is so much. Like you can put 20 hours into Destiny and get it, you know? And that does make it more approachable, but you're only getting half the picture, right?
Yeah.
Versus like the other thing where it's like, if you want to get to where everyone else is, it is days, over a week of your actual real life that you have to kind of put into this.
Yeah.
And it's like, you should pick your poison. Like they're both, I think, bad options. Yeah. But I think they're also both like valuable because like at the end of 14 and they're bringing like characters from like the raid from a Realm Reborn back as major story characters is like, this is really cool. And I'm like super into this, and I wouldn't have cared if I hadn't played all the garbage before. Versus like Destiny, where it's like, I missed something and it's gone forever now, but like I can watch a YouTube video and be like, oh, like that's really cool. They're both bad, you know? At the end of the day, they're both bad.
That neither are perfect scenarios, but are just the reality of it. And that's definitely I would still say the main thing. I think like unfortunately that's just going to be reality of Destiny, regardless of when a new season starts, a new expansion starts. It's gonna, like, especially like where like the direction of they're going now, where it's like we're kind of heading towards what seems to be like a big end game sort of feeling moment with like the universe.
Yeah.
So like it's only going to be more and more like what the heck is going on, and like it's going to be that corner of the internet, like when I see people like, you know, who are losing their minds over like 14 expansion or these things, like, you know, it's just that corner, because that's how these games are now. They have their communities and their groups, and they are more like, and I think these developers like Bungie and I don't forget the name of the team for Final Fantasy 14, but like
one of the internal Square Enix studios.
Yeah, one of the internal studios. Like, they know their audience now at this point, and like they're making the game more for them, because those are the people who like want to keep going with it, and that's just the reality of it. Like, if new people come in, I think they you know, they leave them a little bit of, they give them some bones, but like not a lot, and like that's just I think it has to be more on the person wanting to have interest, or like finding people who are really into it and then joining them, because I think that's definitely been some of why we've ended up playing a lot more as well, is because now we have like multiple friend groups who are already into Destiny and like are all caught up with us, and we're all like experiencing this together. Like I've played the majority of this new content in a group with other people, and it's been so much fun.
And great, yeah. It's like that is me like hitting the actual MMO part of it, where like you have your guild or whatever, you know,
Right.
your clan, whatever game names it, you know, and
Yeah.
it's your free company, and having that group and messaging every day back and forth about a new thing, or like new roles on guns that like, I know you would like chill clip on this, I got to tell you about this,
Yeah.
or like, you know, stuff like that, and that is like
right.
awesome, and it is just one of the best feelings in the world. And I don't have like a lot of games like that, to be honest. Like there aren't a lot of multiplayer games I care about anymore. Either they've come and gone, or I've just moved on, and Destiny is this one that I kept coming back to. Like, we played Forsaken together, and Shadowkeep together, and then we both played Beyond Light at the same time, and then we played Witch Queen together. So we've been on this trip for like a long time, you and me alone, and that has made it even more enjoyable. But
absolutely, yeah.
If you're missing that, I can see how that would be tough. But I think like if you have a group of friends that either played Destiny before or are all interested together in getting back in, I would just say like jump in together and try and like figure it out together, because that's going to be the best time you're going to have.
Yeah, for sure.
But the other elephants in the room, I think, with Witch Queen are like the ugly stepchildren of like the content, which are like the two other major modes as Bungie calls them.
Yeah.
You've got obviously the PvE stuff, player versus environment, campaign and all that, but then there's Gambit and Crucible, and Crucible just never gets any love.
Yeah. And
I know we're not big Crucible people, but a lot of people are, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely like an air of like there's just like a big group of Destiny players who like want this to be their competitive game, and they like the feel of like the gunplay in Destiny, but like there's just like how much stuff and how much Destiny always changes. Like it just needs to, it's just, you know, I think it's hard for them to like want to change and grow this sandbox and make it more and more interesting and breathful, and like add these RPG elements. Like I think when you mix this RPG stuff and make these crazy updates that we'll talk about, like they completely updated it, like a classic, like the subclass that has been the Void subclass in Destiny pretty much since even throughout Destiny 1 for the majority of it. They finally
hasn't been touched since Forsaken, you know.
Yeah, they have finally updated it in a much major significant way with this, and like it is definitely broken once again, or quote unquote broken once again, the competitive or like side of the PvP game, to the point where like everyone's using these, you know, you have hunter subclasses who are always invisible at all times and can just constantly invis, or you have these titans who can throw down shields, or like warlocks who can like, you know, just heal themselves a bunch. Like, and it's just like, you know, it's stuff that was like not as prevalent, and I feel like there's always just going to be a cycle of that, right? Because it's I feel like I feel like we're gonna have this cycle again of, a similar thing happened with Beyond Light, and they introduced an entirely new subclass with stasis, these ice powers, and then like that completely just ruined
People were pissed.
ruined the PvP for like months, and they had to like nerf some of the stuff one time, and that wasn't enough for some people, so they did it all over again another way, and like changed all these aspects and things, and like they're gonna have to do it all over again probably for these new subclass updates, because they're not done with them is something we're saying. Like we have Void 3.0, which is what they're calling it, these big updates to the Void subclass. They're doing it for the other two original light subclasses in Destiny, for Arc and Solar, and like they're gonna have these completely revamped as well. And I can't imagine a world where like some of those Solar subclasses on Warlock were already extremely good in PvP, and now they're gonna be completely insane all over again. And like who knows, maybe all three of them become so powerful that it somehow evens out. Like I don't know if maybe there's just a people at Bungie who are just like, no, we gotta wait. We know it's crazy right now, but we're working on these other things, and they're gonna balance out these other things a little bit more, and you'll see in like 5-6 months or whatever, but it's gonna take time. And I think just the nature of this being a live game that is always literally week to week, there are new things like happening, and new conversations or conversations constantly going, that to the point where like they might have to be like, all right, we have these plans, but now we got to kind of maybe stop and reapproach this. And maybe
that's the fear, right? Is that they have to like postpone updating more things because they have to fix what is
messed up,
like been messed up by the kind of change in power. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, I'll say this: like Crucible, I've not played a lot of, just because there's so much else to do, right? But
yes.
I've played some of it, and it is like a lot, and I think talking about like the big thing with Void that has messed up Crucible is like Titans just have so much more health now because they can generate a full overshield, which is like an additional health bar. Not as much health, but it's it's like 80 more hit points. They can do that like every 10 seconds basically, depending on how they set up their class and whatnot.
Yeah.
And that like everyone talks about like hand cannons 3-tap people in the head, and now it's like 4 or 5 taps to get somebody down, and that throws off everyone's consistency, and that makes the people that play PvP every day and run nothing but shotguns and hand cannons makes them very upset. And then you get like the mix of people like hardcore playing to win, and then the people that are just playing to have fun, and they're all just in the same pool. And it's tough to make that an even playing field at all,
Yeah, and you have like and always with like an expansion, you have like a lot of returning players, like you said, or even just like new players still just trying the game out. So it's like it's hard to like gauge how much of this is like the main community being really upset, or just like not really knowing what the all of these new powers well enough to either use them to their full extent or like counteract them in certain ways that we just aren't aware of yet. So it's like it's always interesting to see like where they come out with that. But like you said, like I'm not much of a PvP guy when it comes to Destiny. That's like not what I come to the game for. Ultimately, like I'm here for like the other aspects and the ongoing story for the seasons. Excuse me, getting to that end game content of doing raids and the Nightfalls and other stuff to unlock like different cool things for weapons and gear and stuff. So like that side of Destiny is always going to be the thing that draws me, and I think that's still the majority of the community. Respectfully to people who really like PvP. So I think that's always going to be the priority, right?
Yeah, and it is the thing. Like people are talking about the Legendary campaign, people are talking about the raid.
Yeah.
And even like the first weekend of Trials, which is like the hardcore competitive playlist, is this weekend, and I'm curious to hear like what the PvP people think of that.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not going to play any of it. At least not the first weekend. That just seems like a bad idea.
I probably won't jump in that first weekend either. That seems like it'll be a potential nightmare. And and like on top of like that of like some of this stuff might be okay with like how it is, but like the problem also with like I know with PvP is like there's not like a wide selection of modes or like different types of modes, and they like haven't really updated that kind of stuff in a while.
In a
So
very
like
long time.
so
Yeah.
like they've like that game has always kind of had the same PvP modes, so that kind of also brings in the like these are why probably people always use these weapons, because they know these modes in and out, and these are the best for those modes or whatever.
Yeah.
And so like that's always going to be the thing where if they maybe introduce different modes and different styles of gameplay, that might change a lot of what makes this stuff, what makes a certain kind of weapon matter, or certain abilities matter more or less.
What I will say though about modes, obviously PvP out of it, Gambit, which is, if you are uninitiated or you're listening to this, is a PvP VE mode where essentially two
Yeah.
teams of 4 are trying to kill enemies and then bank the motes they get from them, while also sending a player back and forth to the other kind of map to mess with the other players. I cannot believe how terrible Gambit is right now. It is unbelievable. And like, I'm not trying to
It's
sound
rough.
hyperbolic, but like
It's rough.
and it's rough. Like, it's one of those things where they made it so after you clear an area, you get an ammo crate that has heavy and special ammo. So that way everyone kind of has heavy ammo at the same time all the time.
Yeah.
And it has just made it a miserable experience because in something like that, like, and it's similar in competitive, we're talking about shotgun can players, like those are the quote unquote meta of the game that
Yeah.
perform the best. You know, you can kill someone in 3 headshots with a hand cannon very consistently, so that's why everyone uses hand cannons, right? Versus an auto rifle where you have to land 16 shots or whatever, something like that. Different weapons. This is the straightest path to murder. So everyone's going to use it because it's what will be the
Mm-hmm.
most successful. In something like Gambit, there's a rocket launcher, Gallahorn. Everybody knows it. I imagine even if you don't play
Yes.
Destiny, you know what Gallahorn is. It
Yeah.
is both. It is essentially an ad clear super. Like, it'll kill tons of enemies very quickly on its own without you having to use abilities.
Yep.
And it'll kill people very well, very
Yep.
efficiently. So everyone just uses it all the time. And when you are not using it, it's like this conversation has been brought up in Destiny before. They call it the power creep of like, if you're not using this piece of
Yeah.
equipment,
You just gotta have a
it's
bad
just
time.
you are at such a disadvantage. Everyone is using it, and it is just the problem of like too many invasions and stuff like it have not been fixed. So now it's
Yeah.
just like the same thing kind of happens every single
Yeah.
match.
And it's like exponentially worse because of how
Yeah.
they also changed how you fight a boss, because that's like the whole thing with Gambit is you bank motes. You're banking motes into this thing. Like, enemies drop these like little motes, and you pick them up. You're banking them into the thing to a point where then a boss spawns, and then
First person to kill the boss wins, right?
first person to kill the boss wins. But now they've changed the boss so where like basically before it was just a boss and you just start shooting at it, and these other little envoy smaller enemies would spawn with it. If you take them down, it would give you like a damage buff to like do more and more damage to take them down faster. What
Mm-hmm.
they've changed now is like it used to be optional to kill those things. You could just kind of melt it down, which was also a problem with the previous game, because then it was just like, well, this you're then it's that there's a snowball effect of just like, well, this team is so far ahead, and now they're about to get the boss up, and then you can just melt that boss with where the power was on that thing. So then it was just that issue. Where now the problem is it has an immunity phase that can be reprocced multiple times, too many times, frankly, because there are too many invasions happening. Because what will happen is you have the 2 envoys that spawn, is what they're called, and now they spawn in a different area of the map. And the boss will have an immune shield, so you can't damage it or do anything to it until you take down those 2 in that particular area. That aspect of it is like that, like on its own, that would be fine to me. Of like, I like having that kind of more movement, so it's not just always this damage phase. It's always happening here. So when people come and invade, they already know where you're going to be, and they can just like do the crap they were already doing in Gambit already. Like, a lot of this stuff already existed in Gambit, was kind of like your major complaints, but it's just been like ratcheted it up to an extreme, right?
Yeah.
But like the thing that the main problem with this is like there's just so many invasions that can happen that like if you all they have to do is like you said like pop a rocket into a dude, they're down. It gives like a big chunk of the health back now to the boss, and that can restart one of those immune phases. So there's more immune phases than there actually should be to the boss, which drags it out even longer. And I literally had like a match that probably was like, I didn't count it minute for minute, but it probably at least had to been like 10 minutes because we had like a stalemate of a match where somebody would invade and kill somebody, and that would push the boss health back up. We would go kill the envoys again, that would give us the buff and we start doing more damage, but that's still just enough time for them to get another invasion and then come back. So it's literally a back and forth of like, somebody on our team goes, kills at least one person on their team. They get a big chunk of health back. That puts their boss back in immune phase, but then somebody's able to come do that to us again. So it's like we're literally just like trying to like ping pong back between this boss immune phase while trying to kill it because we can't do enough damage to it, even with like the stuff we have, which is like super strong. We're like throwing like super at it, throwing our supers at it, shooting it with Galahorns or shooting it with other high energy weapons, and like you can't kill it fast enough, and it was just complete insanity. And like they just really need to, I think if they refine some things, like it comes down to like you said, like power creep stuff and the invasions, like they really need to figure out how to limit that kind of stuff. And I think like the new version of Gambit could be actually pretty all right if they can figure that out. I just don't know.
I was playing earlier today because I wanted to like have it in my head of what's wrong with Gambit right now, and we had a match where you need 100 modes to summon the boss, and so someone came into our world, one dude with Eyes of Tomorrow, which is a very vicious rocket launcher in Gambit. Killed all of us. We dropped down to 15 motes. Like that's all we have deposited at the moment. So now we have to basically start all over again. And they summon the boss. As soon as they summon the boss, we have 15 motes. Invasion immediately happens. Yeah, and it's like, what? How? Why is that allowed to happen? You know, like they have the boss. Like if you have your boss up and the opposing team doesn't, you shouldn't be able to invade until they do, at least. And I don't understand, like, essentially they are fighting the boss and we can't even get a single batch of motes in because somebody constantly is coming and just murdering every single person on our team with one rocket shot. It's like, I cannot, how is this at all enjoyable in any way? It's just like, I understand, and I'm not going to be like one of those people of like, did they even play test this? I know that they did, but I know that they're trying to try as many different things to see if anything's broken, but the community is just going to use the exact same thing over and over and over and over again because it works. Right. And that's the real problem, you know? So it was so demoralizing to the point of like, I don't even know if I want this mode in this game anymore. Like Gambit is at right now is so unenjoyable that like I am begrudgingly doing it for the XP challenges, and then I'm not touching it. I'm deleting the extra bounties that I have. Like I'm not going into it. I don't want to.
It's not worth it. It really isn't.
There's so much better stuff to do. Like why would I play Gambit? And I think like that's a problem.
It's a problem for sure. And it's like it's hard to say because like if PvP had an issue of like getting new like modes or like new maps, even like Gambit is even worse than that because it like it got an update. It didn't get any kind of update until I think it got a similar kind of like change when Beyond Light happened, which made it into the not great version of Gambit which made them have to change it this time. So like they waited, they did that for a whole year. Oh sure. We'll be right back.
Cat panic.
That's okay.
Cat panic.
Cat panic. We had but basically they spent a whole year until they made new Gambit changes like they did now, and now when are we gonna get this change? Like who knows?
They made it worse. Is basically the summation, and they didn't. It's still the same 4 maps. the same 4 places and the
Yeah.
same, 5 enemy types, and it's still not fun. And it's worse now than it was, and it was still very frustrating beforehand. So
Yep.
I don't envy Bungie because it is it is a nuanced mode that used to be very fun, like back in the Forsaken days. I really
Yeah.
genuinely thought Gambit was a lot of fun back then when it was new.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you would go about making it more enjoyable, but like I know this ain't it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like you said, like, is it worth salvaging at this point after they've tried a couple times now to salvage it? And is it more worth maybe just, finally maybe calling it on this mode,
Sunsetting
and
Gambit.
maybe that is the thing. They just say like, hey,
It might be,
we
and
tried
I hate to say that.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And like it is worth saying that like when they announced these changes right before Witch Queen launched, they said they are going to be doing a thing called Gambit Labs, like they did with they did this with Trials, which is like the end game PvP thing you mentioned earlier, that they've been doing, where basically it is like sort of it is like intentionally like a test, like different style mode for Gambit, and then I'm assuming that'll be another thing where it'll be like once a week. At some point, they will try this different style of Gambit gameplay instead of it just being like, I think they described some of them, but I don't remember every single one. I know one was like and when a person comes and invades, it's not a like they're trying to kill people, but it's like they're trying to stay alive in their arena or something.
Yeah, they drain moats as long as
they drain
you're
moats
there
or something. Like, and it's like at the end of the day, I'm for them trying different things to see if maybe there is like some kind of new Gambit that they could essentially, and like kind of the Gambit we once knew is maybe done, and maybe one of these Gambit labs comes out and surprisingly is very fun, and then the community likes it, and it's worth trying. And maybe that just takes the place of what we know as Gambit now. And I'd be cool with that too. But I'd also be honestly cool with them just going like, hey, we tried a few of these things. It didn't seem like people liked it. I think it's just time, like, we call it, and then we put all of this focus and not this dev time into this and into, like, more PvE stuff, and also maybe, like, Crucible.
Yeah. But the other mode was, like, when you bank mode, like, when you hit the thresholds for invasion, the other side gets the invasion, your side doesn't, which could be interesting as well for those people that like bank a lot and are like running up the clock really quickly. The other team gets to invade when they're doing that. So I think that could also end up being good potentially, because like you are essentially putting yourself at risk by banking your moats. And I think that would add some more tactical, interest to the mode, at least for me. And that would ideally solve the invasion problem, or at least adjust it. But it's like when the boss is summoned, like my feeling was like there should just not be invasions for the boss fight part of the match. Like it should just be for the moats. I heard this idea thrown out of like invading like pulls you to an arena where you like 1v1 the other invader, as opposed to them showing up and it's like ruining the time that you're having.
Like Call of Duty does. I think
like the gulag, that's what they call it.
Right.
And that's like when you die, that's how you get back. But I think that there is like some kind of idea there that could be cool. Like maybe when you trigger something and it just rips a random player from both teams into an arena where they have to fight. Whoever wins gets like a buff to their team. I think that could be cool.
It's like moats or something they can bank.
Yeah, and like that keeps the spirit of PvPvE, but it changes it so it's not like somebody's just rolling in and killing your whole team all the time.
Right.
Because that sucks. It is never good. And one of the things that they talked about was like they didn't want it to feel like a good invader could dominate the entire match.
Yeah,
and it feels like that still.
It still feels like that can totally happen, where one invader with one good weapon that they got, a really overpowered exotic for this particular style of thing, can just call a match. It definitely still feels like that can happen, for sure. But yeah,
those were the bad modes.
Those are the bad moments. I feel I wanted to move on because we've been ranting for 30 minutes about some Destiny things. Oh my god, the Witch Queen campaign, everything about the actual expansion update that's not like these updates to this game. to these to the modes I would still consider side modes to the main mode of Destiny. In the main course of the Witch Queen, the campaign, and all of the PvE content and additions to that are like some of the best stuff they've added to the game. Like the best versions of things that have kind of existed before. Like there's been plenty of like various like 6-player activities or like weekly kind of mission grinds you can do, activities and like the campaign stuff. I just think they nailed how to add these to Destiny and like in the best ways possible. Like I think just you know, the campaign itself is like the best campaign that's ever been in a Destiny game, period. Like, period. and I like that's not me saying like the other ones were bad. That's me saying like I liked pretty much all those other campaigns, and this one is significantly better.
It's a lot better, and that's saying
it's pretty insane how like a step above this stuff is, and it sets a bar for sure with these two other big expansions, which are supposed to be kind of the, you know, they have said themselves in interviews that like they are these next two expansions for Destiny that are coming like probably next year and the year after are going to be like their end game, Marvel's Avengers like end game and Infinity War kind of moments for this universe. And like just like to even have this expansion before those is like holy crap. Like I don't think they weren't joshing or like, you know, that wasn't just them talking about, you know, marketing. They're putting everything they can into these things, and like, man, that's the whole ride through that thing of playing. Yeah, like I said, we played it, me, you, and Ren on the legendary version. They did a harder version of the campaign, which was phenomenal. I will say there's I broke up into, I think it's like 4 or 5 parts, a 14-hour stream we did on the launch day that is up on our YouTube channel. So if you really want to watch through all of that, you're free to and kind of see some of our raw reactions to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we were blindsided multiple times.
There was a lot of stuff we just were not prepared for. On so many
hear
fronts.
The excitement for sure.
Yeah, and then on top of that, I've gone through it again on my 2 other characters, since I run 3 different classes in Destiny because I play a lot, and being able to like then play through those solo, and I played them on the lower difficulty, so it's definitely much breezier experience, I would say, than that legendary campaign. But it's like there's just so many moments from that of like you literally have an opening mission where you're on Mars, and like, you know, again, this could be more story stuff that like doesn't maybe make sense to me. Like Mars was like essentially Thanos snapped from the entire universe of in Destiny is like pretty much the simplest way to put it. And just like for no rhyme or reason, like literally this mission opens and just opens with Ikora just like flying to Mars, and they like don't explain any of it, and you're just like, what the fuck? It's just Mars. And I'm hoping maybe they get more into like they start getting more into like, you know, mysteries and like clearly setting up a mystery of like this planet's back and how the hell did that happen.
Yeah, and we're starting to learn like what might have happened to them to begin with, and it's cool that they are paying off on a thread, you know, that they set up over a year ago, you know.
Yes, for sure. But it just kind of opens up, and you're just kind of there, and you have this entire like mission I like didn't even really expect to play through. It's kind of like a really cool mission of like you literally shoot yourself out of a Cabal cannon onto like this mysterious Savathun like ship that has appeared on Mars for whatever reason. And also on Mars, like there's like these weird distortions on the planet where like inside the distortions you can see like the past Mars or maybe like an alternate universe version of Mars who like they don't really, again, it's like not explained. It's just kind of, you just kind of like are dropped there, and then you're just like, what is all this insane stuff happening here?
And then Mars is also where the relic is, and the relic is what the tool you use to craft weapons, which is a whole new added with this, so we'll talk about later. But it's exciting. Like people have compared that mission to like the Phobos mission. Phobos is one of Saturn's moons that you never go to in Destiny 1, but the first campaign mission of the Taken King takes place there, and it's like a cool very more linear traditional campaign mission that kind of leads into the Taken King campaign,
Right.
or is like, the opener to it. And this definitely has a similar vibe of like we go from there to the ship to the throne world, which is the new destination for this expansion, and then it's just kind of all bets are off. Like you start going from mission to mission. I'll say like I am not a Halo person.
Mm-hmm.
I've played the Halo games. I didn't have like that opportunity to have like that campaign co-op Halo experience, but I
Yeah.
feel like I did get that with this.
Yeah.
At least like the idea of like a prestige Bungie campaign,
Yeah.
like that's what this feels like, and
It does.
it's great.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that in terms of like there are these much more memorable sequences throughout this campaign of like these moments you go through, rather than like some of the previous ones where they were there, but also like a lot of these environments are just environments you're running through like 20 other times in some other mission, where like a lot of these, like that Mars mission is just the Mars mission, and like you can play it and it's part of the campaign, and it feels like that moment from
Hmm.
from this actual like story and ongoing campaign you play through, rather than just like some other stuff in Destiny where like strikes for instance are just kind of like these weird one-off kind of things that are still like enjoyable, but like kind of definitely much more basic missions where it's like, oh, I'm standing this plate and kind of just fighting some dudes and using my guns,
Yeah,
and
there
it's an alright
you get
time.
puzzles in this.
But
There's
yes,
strikes
there's
incorporated into the
yes,
campaign.
there's a lot
And
more
you
like
you
set piece moments where you're like, I'm going into this room and like, you're having this bigger battle, and then, oh, to like, I have to do actual like, mechanics or things to like to like, open up this boss for an attack or like do damage to them, instead of rather just being like, it's just this really big tanky boss that I'm just kind of fighting and just
yeah.
shooting at every so often.
And the best thing, you never go to the same place twice.
Yeah.
And it's like when you realize that after the campaign is over, like the big bowl that I'm sure everyone who's listening has seen, if you haven't played, like you don't go there till the end.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal when you go there, right?
Yeah.
Like,
That's pretty
and
much
there's to
where it
know
ends.
like there's 7 other missions worth of places to go
Yeah.
that are not there, and they're
Yeah.
totally worth your time.
Yeah, and then like you go to because that first mission is on Mars, and then like your first mission after that is like kind of your first introduction to the throne world, and like that one is like kind of more on the planet and kind of introducing you to like the destination itself. But then
Hmm.
like as soon as you leave that one and go to the next one, then you're like underground in this like this buried temple that was like a shrine to her sister,
Hmm.
Savathun Sisters Evo Wrath, and like it's all like ruined. So it's kind of giving in like the whole thing with the Savathun's throne world. Getting into the lore of it for people who aren't familiar, is like throne worlds in Destiny are basically like universes, like their own little kind of like universes that are like created from like an image of like their creator's mind. So like this whole throne world is like basically Savathun's mind in this own way. So that's why if
Yeah,
you've seen
they're what
images
make
or
things immortal in this universe. Like if Savathun
yeah,
were to die in the meat space in the real world, she would go to her body would transfer to her throne world and she'd be reborn there, right? Like
yes,
that's how these things become immortal. If like you've played Dungeons and Dragons, it's like a Lich's phylactery. It's a
right,
pocket universe, right? So
yeah,
uh, the idea, like the ship in Taken King is technically a throne world as well.
right,
So this is not new necessarily to Destiny. Like the Shattered Throne dungeon that was introduced in Forsaken, the first dungeon that they had of the game, is Marasov's throne world, right? Like
right,
this has been a concept that they've touched on before, but never to this extent, and they get into it a little bit more here.
yeah,
And being able to kind of explore one like this, I think like if you're even not as familiar with that concept in the lore, like it makes a lot more sense playing through this.
yeah, 100%. And like I think just the like how they use that to like not only tell the story through the campaign, but also like kind of the like subtle nods to like, this is like also teaching you about like where the mind of like the villain and Savathun is at, and kind of also like the experiences she's had, and like you're just getting so much of a more of a um personal knowledge and like learning about this villain that they've never really done with any other villain in the game, I would say. To the point where it's like, like I was getting at, like the third mission is like going to her sister's temple, and like her temple is like just like part like mostly like broken down, and now it's like filled with like an enemy that's been like invading her throne world, or the Scorn from a previous expansion, who originally like fucked up like Fallen, but now they have been kind of assimilated by the true darkness, the big bad, and now they're kind of working under them and kind of have been, taken to that side. But like her whole Shiva Ras temple is like kind of filled with them, and like the remnants of that, and you go into it and it's all like grown over, and there's the gross like little boils that you shoot that like make light, or like all over the temple, and it's like dark and dingy and like destroyed ruins, and it's clearly like that's what like Savathun like thinks of her sister, which is like
that's where their relationship
that's
is
what
at,
the relationship is at, and that's where like their past history was, and it's like it's just interesting to like think of that, and they like have multiple things like that throughout the campaign of like you go to a section that is like themed after what she thinks of Oryx, but like now Oryx's thing is like in her proper new throne world now that she has the light, and like her like light kind of like all like you said, like the big bowl and all this beautiful like castle architecture is like because she has gotten the light, and now she's like trying to like overtake her original like swampy bog areas over with her new light, like basically trying to erase her dark past with all the darkness things with this new bright future that she's trying to hope and obtain.
Yeah. And like just the way that they play with her as a character, and obviously like Savathun, even before she physically showed up in the story, was already the most interesting villain in the game.
Yeah.
And then they did a great job like having you talk to her, like I said, in the season leading up to this and season of Lost, like having actual just straight up conversations with her while she was kind of imprisoned, and that develops a rapport between you and her specifically. But you find out in that season that you were already talking to her, she was already in the city, so now you have a very personal connection to this character. So now we're kind of getting that intimate look inside her brain, and then seeing her memories through certain campaign missions, finding out like the whole mystery is like how she stole the light, and what happened. And they do a great job of like keeping you on the hook for that. And Destiny's never done that before. Like even in like Beyond Light, the most recent campaign, where it's like we just got to stop Aramis. Like that's the whole. There's no mystery. It's just Aramis. Yeah, just stop her.
She's got the power. She's got the ice power too. We got to stop the ice power. Ice power is bad, but not when we use it. It's good and fun when we use it. So let's just stop it. It kind of is boilerplate. But it's way more nuanced, and like you're learning much more about this, like the inner mind of like this villain you've been facing, and like learning about like you said, week over week, even like in lore cards and pieces, because she's always had some kind of hand in like either if it was like back when Forsaken, the whole storyline Forsaken, like she had some part to play in that, and was basically kind of was the person who like put that in place,
all of that.
And and now you see some of that in the Throne World as well, of like you go into you literally fight a freaking Ahamkara, which is the raid boss from Last Wish. In this, it's not like as an elaborate as a fight, of course, but it's
still a shocking moment.
It's still an incredibly shocking moment that this thing just shows up in her throne world, and just kind of calls back to all of these moments of like she's had a hand in all of this, and like this is a part of her mind. Is like really just so well done. In so many ways.
It's so like fantasy, but also they do it in a sci-fi way, and it is like that in a similar way to Dreaming City was perfect space fantasy. Like this also, I think, achieves that same level of like perfect space fantasy. Like, I love it. It is a great merge of sci-fi and fantasy, of the concepts of light and dark that the game has been playing and toying with for years and years and years. And now, like, every year it just gets more nuanced and interesting. And like, this is just the peak for sure, at least so far. And it's just nothing bad to say about that campaign front to back. It's just so good.
Yeah,
But
it's so much fun.
The thing with it, that like everyone was really excited about, this big new thing, is fighting enemies that have the same power as you do. These hive guardians.
Yep.
A knight, a wizard, and an acolyte each have like the different classes that you have. And I think fighting these guys was super fun. I think they really delivered on a new enemy type that was way more interesting than like just a standard boss type enemy or something like that.
Yeah, and it's they use the interesting ways of like how we already in a way in PvP, like, you know, one of the cool things about PvP is like learning how to like, oh, these abilities are like counteract abilities in this game mode already in certain ways. So like knowing that structure, and like they just kind of applied that to like PvE, like in a way with this, in a way that's just like fun to do, because it's, you know, you have these hive guardians who can literally, you know, pop supers, or like the knight can make like a barricade just like a titan does, and literally can throw a suppressor grenade. So
knock you right out of your super,
knock you right out of your super, or like stop you from using abilities on him for a brief period. The hunter has like the trip mine. The hunter version has like I forget what it's called, but it's like a AOE grenade where like it throws it down and it makes a bunch of like little tracker mines.
Grenade.
The seeker grenade, right? The freaking
hate it.
Yeah, it sucks being like, oh right, I throw this at enemies all the time, and it feels good because it just seeks to them. That's all it's like, and it's like, oh wait, this is now being used on me. This sucks. Like, it's rough.
Like the wizard dropping healing rifts that start healing the miners and stuff.
Yeah, it just like, heals the miners and heals themselves. And you're just like, man, I've been doing this whole time. This is fucked up. I get why everyone hates us now. Like, that's what it really felt like.
Great. It's just so fun. It's like such a different dynamic thing to combat, and you have to like run in and crush their ghost, which is already like a very dark concept in this game. It
just feels so satisfying at the same time, which is like which is crazy to think about.
But it changes like how you engage, because like, all right, I'm gonna let this person get low, but I'm not gonna kill them, because if I can't get in close to finish them, then they're gonna get revived basically and come back, and then it just like it's such a different pace to combat. And I think like that level of design in moment to moment combat is like even pushed further in like the raid, when you start getting to like that high end PvE content, where like the bosses in there like are similar in that they challenge you to engage in the combat very, very differently. And it's God, it is so refreshing. Like you don't know you needed it until you get it, and it's like, boy, I love this stuff so much.
Yeah, for sure. It's clearly being like, all right, we've had these powers that we're so used to for so long, and like, or had these very specific ways to use these abilities for so long, that like now completely trying to upend them by not only like giving us new powers, but also like giving us new enemies that make us use these powers in different ways. It's like, it's very fun, and it's so exciting to know like this is just kind of the start of that. With this expansion, like we know like new updates to other subclasses that we've had for years in the game are coming. Like hopefully more new enemies to fight in some way, shape, or form. Like different, you know, maybe even if it's similar things like this, where it's like an enemy type we know, but they get more like, you know, different types of enemies to fight within their ranks that are more interesting and varied and have different abilities than we've ever seen before.
I think we'll see Guardians on other enemy types again as well. Like I definitely think that's possible, and I think we'll see more like Guardians of the Darkness side. I definitely think that this is like a tee up for that, of like stasis, poison, or whatever, you know, other darkness subclasses that might exist. Like we will fight essentially Darkness Guardians in the future as well, and I can't wait to see what that looks and feels like.
Totally.
But yeah, speaking of the updates to the subclass, we mentioned it earlier, but Void 3.0, a reworked subclass for each class, Warlock, Titan, and Hunter. All great. I really genuinely think these are awesome updates.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where like Stasis is obviously the new subclass that has a whole different system of aspects and fragments, which essentially just let you choose the abilities and mix and match them how you want, as opposed to being like you have to commit to a whole tree of a subclass, and
Yeah.
maybe you hate the melee for that tree, but you like the super, so you kind of have to use it. They give you that freedom to choose whatever super you want. Like, if you like Chaos Accelerant, where you can charge up your grenades as a warlock, but you want to still have Nova Bomb, you can do that now. It's like, oh, great! Like,
Yep.
hell yes.
Best of both worlds. Yeah, for sure. And it goes even like it even goes like deeper than that of like not only does like you get to choose a super or a melee, like you get to choose like, things like, hey, when I do this ability, like it recharges my grenade faster, or proc something like Devour, or other things like that. And like they applied the idea what they introduced with Stasis of like having like the classes, the each class subclass for a class. I guess that's the way to put it. Like has like a more defined role to it, where like hunters are better at going invisible now on their subclass because of the abilities and the freedom to mix and match things. And Titans now can make way more overshields and barriers and things like that for their class. Um, they can feed into these roles way more than they ever have before, thanks to like what Stasis introduced with like, hey, like warlocks are really good at freezing enemies, and Titans are really good at shattering the freezing enemies or shattering the ice crystals and things like that, where like they can further play into these roles in a way that like they never were able to before, and that's just been so much fun. Like
so good. Like we played Void 3.0. Well, you played Stasis a lot for the campaign that we did, but like a lot of people say like they're like crutches in PvE content, like the Well of Radiance, which is like this big empowering and healing rift. Like we didn't use that at all throughout the legendary campaign, which is very difficult. Like to say again, it was not easy, but I didn't feel like we needed it at any point. And we were getting as much enjoyment out of like this new subclass that I personally have not used a lot of in like the last year and a half. And it was so cool to come back to it and feel like it feels brand new, even though it's mostly the same abilities that you've had before. Obviously a couple new melees here and there, a couple new abilities here and there. Like the Titan, I think, got the biggest update for sure. But yeah, it's crazy how much it feels way more viable to do other stuff, and that is awesome.
Like if they feel more like, I'd say in specifically with the Titan, to me is like the thing this did to me for me the most was like, again, playing in the identity of the class. Like for the Titan, it literally made that class a class for me, because it really wasn't before. If you really think about it, like, because it was definitely that thing I thought about a lot of, like when you played a Titan before this, like literally like all like you had like the most basic of melees. It was really just a punch on all three classes, and the punch just had like a very basic modifier on it, right? Like the one the center tree one, which was, or the top tree Sentinel Titan, I was the bubble one, so you'd always do that. And all its melee did was you just punch a dude. If you take him out, it would give you an overshield, and it'd give anybody that's nearby an overshield. Which, like, that's okay, but there was not really much to it other than that, and it was just a basic punch. Your barricade didn't do anything. You basically had the option to pull out your shield and run around and smack dudes with the shield, or you can make a bubble. That like those were at least like you could do all in one, which was okay, but I think it made it less interesting, because like ultimately you didn't really want to use the shield running around for anything. You wanted the bubble. That's like the main reason you ran that top tree Sentinel before, was just like, we just want this bubble for a super DPS damage phase in a boss or something. And like it didn't feel like I was playing a protector or like some kind of class. I felt like I was just playing this role to be the super in a DPS phase and not much else. Like, and that's always what that class felt to me. But the idea of like a Sentinel or like a protector class is always really cool to me in any video game. And they finally just like made this class actually feel like that.
Yeah.
Where like now you have things in moment-to-moment gameplay, like putting down this barricade with the bastion aspect. Now it makes it so when if you put it when you first drop it, anybody in the near vicinity or standing right behind it immediately gets a full overshield. So you have a full on protective barrier on top of giving everybody an overshield. If you melee, with the two different melees, they added a whole new melee with it, where you have a freaking like Captain America style shield throw. You just throw it and it ricochets between dudes. If you take enemies out with it, or it hits them, depending on how many you get, it'll give you little chunks of overshield to yourself. But you also still have like the running and charging shield bash that wasn't on one of the separate subclasses from that, so you can never run a bubble and that shield bash. So now you can run that shield bash and smack into a dude, take him out. It gives them a full overshield. Or now, if you're on if it's a different style of enemy, like a bigger enemy that can't be taken down by one hit, it also weakens them, which is like a debuff you can apply now on Void, where it weakens them and like stuns them. They go blind and they put like their face in their arm, and they like can take extra damage. Like it's like a 15% damage, 15%, or something like that. So like you can also like do that multiple things of like give an overshield. Now that there's a fragment that literally has pretty much the same effect of the standard punch that used to be on Titan. It's now just a fragment on top of all of these things, so I can go run into a dude, melee him with that shield bash. Any nearby ally starts getting health regen immediately. I get a full overshield. Also weaken that enemy on top of that, and then I can still like get all of these other things. Like there's the other aspect that's offensive bulwark that I admittedly forget what exactly it does, but I think it's basically like that's another reason why like I think it helps recharge your abilities much quicker, and that's another reason why the
like when
Titan
you have
has
overshield,
way more uptime,
recharges faster, I think.
Yeah.
And they've also like democratized the grenades, so all 7 grenades or 6 grenades are on all 3 classes.
Yep.
So like warlocks can run suppressor grenades for the first time ever, and so can hunters. Like that used to only be a Titan thing. But like it doesn't feel like, while you can get a little taste of some of the other stuff the subclasses can do, like you can set it up so warlocks can do a finisher and go invisible like a hunter. It doesn't feel like that's not the warlock's specialty, right? So it doesn't ever feel like that. Their specialty is devour and proccing health regen and stuff like that. And it like you can really lean into that in like such a fun way. And the exotics that they made to go along with this help with that. And it's so fun. I can't get over how fun it is. And yeah, like I've only played a little bit on the other 2 classes because I'm mostly just a warlock person, except when I need to run Vault of Blast for the 36th time. But yeah, like the Titan was just immediately like felt substantially different. Like, oh man, I throw down this barricade and it's purple, and I'm getting, you see like the ray of light of like if you stand in it, you're getting that overshield regen.
Overshields and giving stuff. Yeah.
It's so cool.
It's really cool, and like I think like the hunter is one that like I think like immediate, like I think like first impressions made it not seem like that substantial, but I think like now that we're getting deeper and deeper into like content, we're really seeing like, wow, this really the amount of like invisibility they can the hunter themselves can do, but also give to other allies, like is like literally going to be like so many saving moments that class can now do, on top of now having a better version, an updated version of one of their supers that literally makes the arrows track to enemies and you do way more damage, and it literally applies like every like version of like debuff that you could possibly. It gives like the best debuff in, I think it's like in the same tier as like the best debuff anything can give, where it's like 30%. The tether. It makes enemies volatile and weakens them, I think, as well.
Yep.
And or maybe it's like or it's like weaken and suppress. It's like one of those.
Yeah.
It's one of those things as well. And it's just like, now that super just does that all in one, which then also plays into like whenever a hunter applies any of those things or defeats an enemy that is affected by those things, they go invisible. So you can literally just like do that, or you have like a version of what the Stasis Hunter had, which was a shadow dive where you could like jump up in the air by an ice crystal and land down. It does like a little shockwave and like shatters crystals around it, which used to be a complete menace. But now I think they learned their lesson from that version, and now you have one where like if you have a melee, which on a hunter now by default, and it always is just like a smoke bomb they throw down. If you have that fully charged melee charge, when you do it in the air, you do like a fall, and when you land on that fall, it makes like a smoke cloud that suppresses enemies, but also makes any of your allies invisible with you. So
Yeah.
like, I've seen it already used to great effect of like, hey, a hunter revived me, and then like as they revive me, they jump up and then just make us both invis right as I'm revived, and we can just get out of dodge for like a terrible moment. Like having like stuff like that is like really useful, for sure, and just having a hunter be able to more scope out of a battlefield and like survive in some of these crazier moments, is really cool. And I really like I pretty much like all three classes and what they've expanded on them quite a bit, and it makes me like even more excited for those other subclasses that are coming. Like there, one more, we don't know exactly which one it is, but like that's not that far
People
away.
Seem to think Arc 3.0 is going to be the next.
Yeah, like that's the one I'm most curious about. Because like I feel like that's the one that has needed the most change more than anything, in my personal opinion. Because there's just like I feel like that's another one where there's like I don't really know what the Titans arc identity is, because I feel like it's not really been anything besides
like a Thunder Crash for nothing.
Yeah, and like the other ones are like we're kind of good in PvP, but like not really had any place in PvE in a long time. The same with the exact same thing with the Hunter one, where it's like it's kind of good in PvP for like meleeing, but it's not really that great because it can be countered by a lot of things. Or if you're just you know how to move around the game, you can kind of outmaneuver that super pretty easily.
That like the Warlock arc class is like the perfect example of like I like bits from each tree, but I do not like the commitment to like I want to run Chaos Reach, but I don't necessarily want to run some of the other stuff with that.
Yeah.
And I kind of have to commit to that in order to play that subclass. Like now I'll be able to run Chaos Reach with Arc Soul, and it's like, oh yeah, hell yes.
Yeah,
like that's all I've ever wanted to do.
yeah, it's pretty easy to see how much better that would make that arc subclass for the Warlock, where the other two I'm like that they're the ones I'm most curious about, because like and the fact that they made like the Sentinel like Titan Void 3.0 subclass probably like one of my favorite things to play in the game right now. Like that makes me kind of excited to see like what are they going to do for these classes, and like figure out their identities. Where I feel
Solar
like
3.0 I'm so excited for sure.
Yeah, and Solar 3.0 is going to be really interesting as well. I can't wait, and like it's such a refresher to these subclasses, because they have literally been these subclasses since Destiny 2 launched in 2017, or more. I guess you could say technically Forsaken, because they did get an update in Forsaken, which was but still that was 2018, like 4 years ago.
This is the thing though, that and you felt it kind of like half measured with Stasis because it had this system set up, but this is the thing that makes it feel like Destiny 3. Like when we have all three new subclasses, this will, in my head, effectively be Destiny 3.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's cool. That's like that tells you how substantial a difference it makes.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, we talked about the campaign and kind of our impressions, but again, with Destiny, it is a service game. It's an MMO. I'm gonna force myself into just calling it that, because I truly believe it is just that now at this point. There is end game content. There's the lead up to the raid. We have both completed the raid, but there's a bunch of other new pieces of content that were kind of in between that to get us there. Like I think my favorite thing, which ties into another system that they introduced, like it's like a pretty foundational system, I would call it, is weapon crafting. They introduced Wellsprings and weekly campaign missions, which are both like the Wellspring is a 6-player activity that opens up on the Throne World. It changes daily, and there's a unique Throne World weapon tied to each day. So basically, like today, for instance, the day we're recording this, I believe it is the
should be the auto rifle or the sniper.
I think it is the sniper rifle, and then tomorrow it'll be the auto rifle, and then it goes 2 more weapons and then restarts that rotation. But also in that daily rotation, there are 2 different versions. There are 2 different versions of it where there's one is attack and one is defend. Where attack has you kind of, basically like essentially sort of, storming the castle, if you will, of that big bowl at the end of Seventh thing where you run down this bridge fighting, like it'll be Scorn or it'll be Hive, Light Hive, depending on the day, and then you fight through those guys, and then you get launched up these cannons to a payload, like a defend payload that's moving through an area, and you lead it up to this to like the main area where you break it open, and then you fight a boss, and then you get some rewards, like again, which are those weapons. I will say I like the mode a lot. It is pretty fun, but I think it has been plagued by these bad drop rates that are tied to weapon crafting, a new major system that they added to the game. This is something I was probably the most honestly excited for going into this, and that's like
excited and worried,
that's saying something because of all the new like stuff we got. Just because of like how much I like to invest in this end game stuff and having this whole new system to invest deeper into, not just like the RPG side of like building my class out, but also now being able to build my weapons out how I want them and not feel like I'm, running this thing 20 times to just make sure I get a roll or get all these Umbral or stock up on like 40 Umbral engrams to go put them into this thing and just hope for this weapon to drop. Like now you have these more directed paths that like, all right, if I play this activity enough, a red border weapon will drop. And certain weapons are not fully craftable yet. I'm sure they will come as the game gets updated with new seasons and stuff. So like that, the aspect of there not being a lot of guns right away is kind of fine with me personally, because it's still a new system that people are figuring out.
Just separate from it,
Yeah. And there's still like a lot of things to figure out with the system, and that's pretty clear from this initial take on it. Is that like one, there's a lot of currencies involved with it. Again,
you can't see how many you have at any given time, which is very frustrating.
Yeah, it's hard to like, you have to like get a red border weapon, and then if you look at the perks of the red border weapon, they'll tell you how many of that element you have. But then there's like a base level currency that you can't see unless you go to Mars on the Enclave, and you can see it there when you start crafting a weapon, or you can use one of the like the 2 or 3 Destiny third-party apps that a lot of people like use, like Destiny Item Manager or Braytech, and you can see them listed in those like third-party apps, but just not directly in game, which is very weird.
Yep.
But anyway, like the thing with those also, those like they have a bunch of caps on them, so you can only hold a certain amount of like these, like there's neutral element, and then there's resonant alloys, and then there's ascendant alloys, and then there's different like ruinous element.
Android elements, stuff like that.
There's a whole bunch of them, and like they're basically, it's like there's 2 base ones. There's two base ones, and then there's 2, and like the various elements are for like, this element is like a damage style. So this one's like tied to like the damage perks, or like the helping with reload or handling perks. So like it's like they're kind of broken down that way. They all have currency caps, which is like a reality we're just like they're gonna have to live with, because that's like limitations of a video game.
Yeah, systems. But they're definitely too low. The currency caps are too low.
Some of them feel pretty low. Even though there's like not that many weapons, I feel like I really, 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 really want to craft right away. Like I'm not like feeling like it's. I think it's like a combination of some of these.
It's not hurting as much right now, but it makes you not want to experiment as much.
Correct.
And the biggest thing with that, and I know we've talked about this, is that like when you craft a weapon, you've got that crafted weapon, and then you have to use it to level up, and it always starts at level 1, and usually the perks that you can have from the beginning are terrible, so you have to invest with a weapon that is not really the one that you want to use, and then if you want to change anything at any point in time, you have to respend all the materials. You can't like perma unlock a barrel perk. Anytime you want to switch it, you have to go to the crafting table and respend the exact same amount of materials that you did initially to change just that one thing, right? Like, per part of the weapon. And it's just like a thing I was thinking about. Like, I have a level 36 glaive, right? Which, we don't necessarily have to get into the new glaive. It's great. I love it. But if I were to now go and make another one of that glaive, I don't have the option of all the perks that I've unlocked for my one glaive. So, which doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I really thought of like, there should be like kind of like a universal weapon level for a weapon that can then apply to anything that you would craft with it. So that way you can at least use a version of a gun that you like, and then you can go and get the enhanced version of those perks on the crafted version that you have. But as it is now, you have like this one gun that basically you kind of have to use and then decide what you want to put in it, and you can never change it again. Because if you wanted to switch an enhanced perk to another enhanced perk, it is very expensive to do that.
Yeah, it's very costly for the currencies in the game right now. And yeah, that's like you said, it limits the feeling of like, I want to experiment with this. It just becomes the like, all right, well, these people are saying this is the best perk on this gun. I'll just like grind out these currencies and then make that, and then hopefully that should be okay for a while. But it doesn't let you try and find like, it makes it feel currently less like you're making your own, and just still kind of just making the best version of a gun there is, which is already kind of which is kind of what you were already doing before. So like it's definitely like that aspect of it is a little underwhelming. It
has issues. But it's not like a deal breaker. I don't think
it's not a deal breaker. They're definitely like, not to say there isn't weapons I want to craft. It just does not feel like I need to craft them right now. Like, and I have this drive to like make this best version of this weapon right now, because it just costs so much. And like, and not to mention like, all the other things that existed before this, like drop weapons or like you focus Umbral engrams, still exists in the game. Like, none of that is gone. So you can still pretty easily get like a lot of really good versions of weapons if you just like, go focus an Umbral engram at one of these places, or just like, run some strikes and get some drops. Like, I got plenty of like really good weapons like already. So it's like, so I do not feel like I like, oh my god, I like this bow and I can craft it, but like I don't need like the best possible crafted one yet, because this one is like still just good enough.
Yeah, the thing that is tricky is like the crafted weapons are the only kinds of weapons that can get enhanced perks, which are new to the game. Like, and they're so expensive that it is such an investment, and you don't know if you're gonna like it. It's and you don't know how much of a difference the enhancement's gonna make, just because of classic Destiny written menu text. That just says like greatly increases a thing instead of slightly
increases a thing.
What does that mean? Like, what
does that mean?
Maybe that means 7 seconds versus 3 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is it even worth it? It's just some of it just does not seem fully worth it yet. But at the same time, it's like, I know this, like, they take feedback very well, and I know they're gonna keep looking like this. Weapon crafting is a permanent thing that they're clearly like. This is not something going to be like, well, we tried weapon crafting for this season, it's gonna get sunset. Like, this is a permanent addition to this game that like is going to evolve and change over time, and as they add more and more weapons to it. So like I'm more than still very happy that it exists in the game now, and I'm excited to see kind of what feedback they take and what they adjust with it in the future. That's kind of where I'm just kind of happy to wait a little bit longer, because again, the things that already existed in Destiny before that I liked, just Umbral engrams and like things to like get more weapons and get more chances at better versions of weapons, like, exists now just fine, and all of that stuff was generally like not the ideal, but like it was still generally like fun and manageable to interact with. So it's fine.
It's a good start. Like, I think it is a stronger start than some of the other systems that have been introduced. Like, I think back to Umbral focusing when they redid it in Beyond Light. Like when that started in Season of the Hunt, it was pretty rough, and then it got much better as that year went on.
Yeah.
And it is a similar thing of like, I could totally see this. You know, it has some issues now, but I know this will be in a much better spot. Probably, even next season or the season after.
Yeah.
Like we won't have to wait long before I think a lot of these issues are at least talked about or addressed in some way,
Yeah. Yeah. And I do like that, like, they've already sowed the seeds of things to like do in the game to like grind out some of these materials. Like they introduced weekly campaign missions that have like a scaling difficulty, and like the higher difficulty you do of them give you better chances at dropping of, like you said, that kind of rarer, higher tier currency that's called Ascendant Alloys that are used to craft like higher, some exotics that are in the game, but also like, getting those enhanced perks on guns and weapons. I really like that they like did this. I just hope that like that's the thing they continue to do, in terms of like maybe in a few seasons, like make the weekly campaign mission thing like a full on like playlist with other campaign missions from other expansions, or other even like maybe like seasonal like story missions if they end up doing any extras of those. Or we know like Grandmaster Nightfalls are kind of like a big end game thing they launched later in the season. I hope you can get Ascendant Alloys from doing those, because we already do those a bunch and they're super, and I like doing those because they are kind of that higher tier, like one of the harder biggest challenges in the game besides stuff like raids. So I hope they add some of that stuff into those already like end game sort of grinds and weekly things to do.
And a passive way to get like the neutral element baseline material. Like I think you should be able to get that from like running strikes and stuff. Like maybe not a lot, but as long as you're accumulating it as you're doing everything, it would make the kind of expense of everything way less. And I think that's just something that will come with time. Like there could be a ghost shell mod that could easily fix that problem, and just introduce that next season.
Totally. So just increase drop rate of this stuff from activities or something.
Yeah, and I think it's in a good spot from the get go. It's they'll iterate on it and we'll see how it goes.
They need to finer tune it for sure.
Yeah, just like Void and 3.0 and the other subclasses, like these things will change and evolve as time goes on, and I'm excited about that. I'm not like upset that it's not perfect out the gate, because I think this first step is a strong first step.
Yeah, 100% agree. There's some other like smaller activities, but I think the big boy we should really talk about from this, because we just recently played it. It was just this past weekend. Vow of the Disciple, the new raid that they introduced. Holy crap!
I'm curious because like we ended up finishing it separately.
Right. You can go see. Yeah, we did a day one attempt, the contest mode. That's like another like 10-hour stream we did. I probably will not unfortunately archive that one, but I think even by the time you hear this, you still might be able to go on our Twitch page, twitch.tv/irrational passions, and maybe watch some of it there. But we did an attempt at it. Even then I was having a lot of fun, as hard as it was. But we ended
much
up
more ready for it this time.
Much more ready for it, for sure. Then I think we ended up having different times that we went to run it with like different groups. I think it just worked out that way because of timing, time stuff.
You're a real adult that it sleeps at normal times. And
I was gonna say some of it was just like I have to start working again this week, and we
have a lot of West Coast people on our squad.
There's like a lot of different time zones that we have to deal with sometimes, unfortunately. And I ended up playing with like my Giant Bomb clan group, and you played with our usual like kind of PlayStation group.
Mm-hmm.
And man,
so what did you think of like actually going through it front to back and all that?
So we in my group, we didn't start from the beginning. We jumped into where we left off from that stream of like we were on the second boss encounter, or the first, I guess second encounter, first boss. Yep. Man, I think it's probably up there with one of my favorite Destiny 2 raids, like period.
Me too.
It's like every encounter just has like something about it that's just super fun. And also like like different from like things we've. I mean, except I guess one encounter, which like is the encounter after the third one, is literally taking different relics from previous raids and incorporating them all into a single encounter, which is crazy to think about.
It's a wild encounter too. Like that
Yeah.
third one where you're fighting tons and tons of enemies. It's
Yes.
very reminiscent of the third encounter of Deepstone Crypt as
Yeah.
well, where
It's
it's
just
kind of like
chaos.
just pure chaos.
Yes.
But like it demands way more organization, like and you have to know who's doing what at a
Yep.
given time.
Yeah, because you have to swap. You have to swap between. Basically, it's this encounter where like each it's only like 3 rooms of like, or it's like 4 rooms of things
4
you have to
rooms, yeah.
do in, and you're basically going to these points, taking out enemies and calling out these symbols that you see. But it's like the rooms are getting progressively larger, and they're adding these extra relics that are from previous Destiny raids. That incorporate those mechanics from those things into the like this single encounter. Like you have the relic that was from the original Vogue Destiny 1 raid and now remastered in Destiny 2, where you straight up have to grab it and like to make the barrier to cleanse your allies so they don't get blinded or killed.
Yeah.
There's the last there's the little like orb that's like it's a little like cranium like thing where it shoots a little laser, which that's in like multiple raids. I think that's like in Last Wish, that was in Leviathan, and it's in like some other activities where basically it can break. There's these immune shielded enemies that are throughout the area, and only that laser can break them. So that person has to go find these enemies hidden in particular areas to break their shields so people can take them down. And then eventually you get the Taken orb that was from Last Wish, the Last Wish raid. Or more recently, if you played through Season of the Lost, through that realm, what was it? I already forget the name of that activity. The astral alignment. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That activity, you get like the little
Hive
taken
ribbon or
thing,
whatever.
and yeah, you can shoot with it, but also you have this like little AOE when you hit your grenade button, where like, and you're cleansing these taken orbs that are like latching onto enemies and making them immune. So you have to like leap. So you basically have to like run your own way around to like get to these points to like take them out. So it makes the enemies not immune, so you can kill them. That makes like other things spawn in the rooms, like the actual enemies you need to take out to like make these symbols appear. And yeah, it's just utter chaos.
It's so okay. And like people with artifacts can see one set of symbols and people without can see the other set, and then you have to find the matching one between the two. It's like it demands communication as well, like throughout the whole raid in a really cool way. It very much the call outs and stuff like that remind me a lot of Last Wish. In a good way. They gave all the callouts names this time.
Yeah, that was like, that's like one of the best things they did for sure. It was very funny when you literally enter, you like when you first go in, because the whole pyramid takes place in a pyramid. That's the whole thing with the on Savage Throne World is big. You'll see this when you're walking around the throne world. You'll see in the distance a little darkness pyramid ship just like hanging out there, and then that's eventually where you go for the raid. When you first enter the pyramid and go right before the first encounter, there's just this room, this little big hall of like symbols, and you can walk up to them and see all the names. So remember that whole moment of like, all right, we have to sit here and remember all these names of these.
I literally wrote down all
wrote them all down, and and so that whole first encounter was like a big learning experience, which was like super interesting because you have to learn all those symbols and like and learn all of the communication of those symbols, right? That's like the big thing with that encounter. And then of course you have like the first boss, which is like one of like the. I thought they wouldn't go back to like having like a major DPS check boss right away.
Yeah.
With what happened with A-Track last year, but this was that raid boss again all over. I think for a lot of people where we got stuck on this boss called the Caretaker, and he's this like Scorn. You find out in the lore that he's like the first successful Scorn who's been fused with like a worm, a darkness hive worm, and he has this like crazy like he's like shuffling around this big like crux of darkness on his back, and you have to like one person has to like get his attention and like have him like have these. You have to like grab his attention with like whatever you can, like shooting him or whatever, and then you'll get this gaze and then it'll open up the thing on his back, and another person shoot it to like stun him, and all while those people are like literally like babysitting this boss who's trying to murder you.
Yeah.
Three other people are
crazy.
running. Three other people are like, or three or a few other people are running into this room to pick up symbols that are on this totem that the boss is trying to get to wipe you or completely take everybody out from the encounter. And then you have to call out and shoot all the symbols at once with a group, or like when I was doing it with my group, we just actually had two people kind of doing the duty of that and having more people.
Yeah, that's what we ended up doing
with
too,
ad
as well.
clear. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit more manageable with that. And like you're doing that, and then when you go into DPS, there's these very specific plates you have to stand on to even damage the boss, and those are rotating while you're doing damage. And then you do a certain amount of damage to him, he then teleports to a whole another floor. You're literally chasing him up multiple floors and like repeating these steps in it. And it's like an insane like labyrinth encounter that was really cool. Not anything I've like. I feel like that's like not a style of an encounter I've seen in any Destiny raid before, right?
Yeah, agreed.
I think that's like
the stunning the boss is like a similar mechanic, but the way you go about doing it here is very different, and it requires like so much more attention. And all the while, like snipers keep spawning, so you have to deal with them, or else it's game over. You know, it's very intense, especially that second floor. That second floor sucks.
It's very, very intense. And I want to say, like, now we'll talk about the final encounter. Again, we should have said spoilers, warnings for a lot of this stuff up front.
Just throw it up in the video.
I'll
big spoiler tag.
I'll throw it up in the video, being like, "Hey, spoiler warnings." The final boss is like an enemy race or some kind of enemy that we've like never seen in the Destiny universe, like period. And like I don't know about, I know like a lot of people in our group, like after that day one experience, like went and watched a lot of streams and stuff. My clan group, there's only 4 of the people had like not seen anything of this raid beyond the point they got to, because they got pretty much to this they tried day one with the group and got to the same point that we pretty much got with, like they got into the caretaker fight and like couldn't get past caretaker. And so they had not seen those 2 other fights. And like I had not immediately seen much either. Like I watched some guides and like some videos, but it's like the insanity of this both these encounters
cracked, dude.
It's like you can't like I can watch those and like I have to like just do the encounters because I can't make sense of what's happening. It's freaking insane and cool. But like I have no idea what's going on this whole time. But basically you fight Rolk, the first disciple of the Witness, who's the Witness is kind of more so revealed at the end of the campaign as kind of like, you know, at least as we know, kind of like the biggest of bad,
you know,
of the darkness that we've kind of seen so far in the universe. If he is truly the Thanos, we don't know yet for sure, but it's what we know of so far, right? Like we just know like he is like the highest on the totem pole of villains that we've seen like in Destiny period so far. And you kind of learn a lot about that through the lore of the raid, which we'll get into after this, because holy crap, the lore is for so this good. Entire raid is like incredible. Like,
and the storytelling is better too. Like I genuinely think they stepped up, because like there's a mission that unlocks after the raid where you go back into it and you get to hear a lot of just narrated dialogue that they've
from the raid boss himself, like like that's never been done before in Destiny.
Yeah, Destiny doesn't do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or you have to like go read like multiple segments of it through some lore book that was.
And you can get more from those books, but now you at least get a good grasp of like who this guy was and why he was such a monster.
Yes.
And so crazy, intimidating. But like this last encounter is like it's 2 parts, and they're both extremely intense. Yeah. And they require like a rhythm and a like your team kind of like cycling between things, but like most importantly, like the fight, like when you go to the second part,
it's like an actual fight, and
it's like
crazy.
A real fight.
It's it's weird to say.
This guy is like coming after you the whole time.
Yes, it's weird to say, because like to put raid bosses in Destiny in general in perspective is like a lot of it is like you doing mechanics to this kind of like, you know, either it's Riven, who's like this big like Ahamkara like dragon head who's like stuck out of the wall, and it's just like this thing in the wall that you're kind of fighting, and like you're opening it up for an attack, or like other bosses that like you can't really get near, and like because they'll just do the usual thing of like, I'm just gonna stomp you, and it's either gonna immediately kill you or launch you across the room away from me. And like usually when the damage phase happens for most bosses in Destiny, it's just they stop in some place and then you're just like hitting some
you drop a well body. You pop a bubble,
and yeah,
you hunker and you do DPS.
This dude, when you're DPSing him, he will straight up just run up on you. He'll like
and
charge,
ruin your day.
He'll charge at you with a glaive. He'll just kick you in the fucking head. Like he is doing all kinds of things, and like you're just in an arena with him. And like the way you like go up into that battle, like he's like you said, like the first part you're talking about where you're like literally like some person has like a technically a debuff, but then the boss is like shooting giant lasers across the arena, and the person actually has to, with that debuff, has to jump into the laser to get a better version of that buff that lets them go through this big barrier that the boss is putting up. And all while doing that, the other people are like looking at symbols in the room. Again, then they have to find these specific symbols to call out to the person so they can go, dunk the power into this, which pushes the shield back. And after you push it back enough by doing that, like rinse and repeat, you then have this like it's always like a cool like will he won't he moment of when you have to go do DPS because you're
looking at you.
Yeah, because the whole time he's just like staring at you from like floating up in the sky above the arena. And then when he gets pushed back all the way where you have to go in the arena, he just like freaking
he pulls out his weapon.
He like lightsaber swings his glaive around like, come the fuck up here, we're about to fight. And you run up these stairs and you're in Serena with him, and he's just running around. He's like trying to slice you
actively
with a glaive,
trying to kill you the whole time.
Actively trying to kill you and he's like shooting the lasers out of his body. And when he does this, like again, like that whole person gets a debuff, and then they have to get the laser to hit them.
Absorb the laser and then dunk it somewhere in order to make the boss vulnerable. Yeah, it's crazy. But like the fight is just we've never had a Destiny fight because like we said before, a lot of it, like Atheon is a perfect example. Tried and true. The Vault of Glass final fight, you hunker, you sit in the same spot for 30 seconds, and you just do as much damage as you can. You just can't do that here. Everyone is constantly mobile, and so is the boss, and he's coming for you, dude.
He's just constantly trying to like run up on you, and like you can do some things where like one person has to can try and pull aggro, and then they're like actively chasing him around, but still that leaves like a whole lot for that one person to just be like, oh god, and like running around constantly because he's either doing this like big dashing lunge, or he's shooting lasers around the room, or he's like kicking people in the face, which is like I'll never not laugh when I see somebody just like freaking. He just does his little kick and just gets clocked in the face, and then you're just
the first time we did DPS with our crew, like we got up there and it's like, all right, let's we're gonna feel this out. He just ran up, killed two of us with a kick immediately, and it was like, oh fuck, it's all falling apart. It's just, but like that's so fun. It's just so different. Like you're rotating around this small square and constantly shooting at him during the damage part of it, and it's so stressful because he's trying to kill you the whole time. Like there's just never been a boss like this in Destiny ever before. Even in the Legendary campaign, there's not anything quite on this level. And it's so fun. It is just the most fun fight. I couldn't get over how much fun I was having. Like just going, like it feels like a really tough tug of war that you're just trying to keep on your 2 feet while you're fighting this guy.
You're just trying to keep a hold of so many things, like knowing when these symbols are popping up, or knowing the placement of where he is, or if he's gonna like pop off his laser move or do whatever the thing. Like it's so much more of an active fight than like any other boss that's like been ever a boss in particularly a Destiny raid. Like I think this boss feels way more like a proper MMO, like major MMO boss like that.
Yeah, I was thinking about Final Fantasy 14 the whole time.
And just like having these tells of moves you have to move out of the way of, and these moves can be devastating, or and looking for your openings, and it's so freaking well done, and it's so much freaking fun.
And keep in mind, while you're fighting this, you're on top, floating above a giant world, a planet-killing weapon that is also above a giant hive worm.
One of those worms are considered gods to the hive, which are like the genocidal race that you're like have been fighting for destiny for years. This dude just like literally plucked literally the mother to all other worm gods from her habitat from we assume was like the deep or fundament or whatever. I'm getting way deep into Destiny lore for people, by the way, who are just like, what the fuck did you start talking about? But anyway, yeah, he basically the whole like that worm that you see in the raid, which is like such a cool ass like
so many amazing skyboxes
and scenes, and like just like the whole raid like setup of like, you know, as you like progress through it, you're like seeing different angles and getting closer and closer to this scene as you see it. It's like so freaking well done.
We joked ahead of time too of like, we don't even know if there's gonna be a giant hive worm in there. It turns out there was.
Yeah, it turns out there was. And and not only is it like it's like a very important worm, because like again in the lore, I think it's lore you can read on one of like the new raid armor pieces. Is that worm is named Zeta, and it's the mother of the worms, and like basically it's implied that like she is like she birthed not only the other worm gods that are considered the worms that like the hive serve to, but like basically all worms. And that's like the whole thing with this pyramid is like you go around it and you see all these worms in cases and like almost looking like they're dissected or whatever. And that's because she's the one who's like manufacturing all the worms, and that's what like the original goal was with Savathun's throne world, was to have this like worm production facility, which was this pyramid, which is what Rolk was like ended up having to do because he failed like indoctrinating some other race beforehand. Like, and that's kind of the lore of it, of like that's why he's in the throne world, is basically he was the very first disciple of the Witness, which is basically like the Witness's direct servant. And he became the disciple of the Witness by literally destroying his entire homeworld and murdering his entire race and his father and mother. Like,
yeah,
he became which made him the disciple of the Witness, and he became these dark.
He blew up the sun to his world. Like, he destroyed his planet and his entire species. It's like next level shit of like this. Like it is cool because we've heard stories about like the Hive doing this essentially to many worlds. And now we've learned the origin of like one person that has done this to many worlds. You know,
yes,
like
correct, and like that's
intense.
It gets pretty intense in that lore, and then basically you learn that like he went to go under the Witness's rule to go to like another planet to like basically like have like get another disciple for the Witness, and like he like starts like training this person, and that thing like, and he basically like kind of sees what he became in that one, and that one like wipes out the race of their people and becomes one of the last living ones, and he like basically it was not intentional for him to do that, and he basically like fucked up. That's basically what it comes down to, because like that was not what the Witness actually wanted. The Witness wanted like a whole new like army essentially from this new group, and then him doing that, Rolk end up having that failure happen, is why he was then sent to Savathun's throne world and the pyramid to basically kind of oversee her, which then led to like her not liking that and seeing like what the Witness's plans were and stuff like that, and she being like, you know, knowing that like, you know, like the Witness was like kind of all in the play of this or whatever, and like not wanting to be like an underling to him,
and
she
didn't want to be beholden to anyone.
She then then went on this whole ploy to get the light, and then she, you know, that's the whole,
she used it to beat Rolk's ass, you know.
She like trapped Rolk in that pyramid, and then like obviously we take her out in the expansion and not realizing like that all happened, and she like, in how she actually gets the light, which I guess we didn't really like touch on story wise, but like spoilers, she like basically comes to Earth and is like begs for the light from the Traveler, and the Traveler gives it to her, and so like she gets turned into a Guardian and loses all her memories like a Guardian does in the World of Destiny. And then the whole campaign is us like trying to figure out how she got it, but in doing that, we're feeding her memories back to her because her throne world is an image of her own mind. So she's like getting directly fed her memories thanks to us to learn all of this stuff. And we basically have this thing where she knows the witness is coming to destroy the traveler and is like on this vendetta to destroy the traveler. And her ploy was to like trap the bathe the throne world in light and protect it that way with her power, and then put the traveler in the throne world to protect it from the witness, which in one way is a good, like technically kind of a good thing, but in doing that would then strip like humanity of its only way of surviving, which is the light. So like that's why ultimately we kind of go there and try and stop her.
But like we learn about Rolk's homeworld, Lubre, and like the traveler went there and then left, and like where we pick up with Rolk is like years after that, and it's like they're just a mess. It's like a civil war because some people side with the light and some people side against it actively, and we see kind of like just more and more of that kind of gray area of like the traveler isn't like the light, it is a being that makes mistakes and makes choices, and we see that with Savathun, we see that with what happened to Lubre and Rolk and stuff. It's just very, very good storytelling of just more and more gray area between the light and dark, and it's very good. And that final boss fight is one for the history books. It is just so good.
It's one of the most fun raids overall, and one of like the coolest boss fights, and I'm so excited to like just like have that be a raid. We're just like kind of as a group doing a bunch and like over time, and I can't wait to do more of it.
Yeah, you're running it again tomorrow. I ran it.
I'm running it again.
Time.
I'm running it again tomorrow and Saturday from this recording.
Yeah, it's a good time, and it's just like it is like just the icing on top. When I they had said like all they had said about the raid was that it would be in a pyramid ship in Savathun's throne world. Like you have a high expectation for that, I think, like because they didn't really give us that with Beyond Light. They didn't like give us that moment where we finally figure out what's going on inside a pyramid ship, or what a darkness race would look like, and what any of this would be. And they delivered on that. It was a high bar, and I think they really delivered on it.
Yeah, I'm genuinely impressed and excited to see where Destiny goes this year because of all the stuff they set up with like kind of this expansion. And like I still feel like we don't really know where like the seasonal story stuff is going. Like we've like just started getting into like that kind of season, because like unlike other seasons prior, like the season of the Risen, which is the current one we're in, like launched alongside the Witch Queen expansion. So like the stories are kind of in tandem with each other a little bit, because like the whole setup of the season is like, well, Savathun got the light, and now her guardian hive are like kind of coming out of the throne world and like fucking up, like and are in different parts of Earth, like trying to come after us, and we need to stop it. So we get back on the side with Keitel, who's the current empress of all of the remaining Cabal forces, and we kind of team up with them to like use the scions of Keitel's forces to go into the minds of the Hive Guardians that we're capturing, to like figure out like why they're kind of like outside of the throne world, and they're like gathering light or something, and like doing other stuff,
taking light from Guardians.
Yeah, taking light from other Guardians, and like they're trying to basically we're kind of like figuring out where that mystery is going. I don't think it's going to be like, it doesn't seem like it's been interesting, but like I don't necessarily know if it's going to be like as directly as like this is going to go right into this next season much as this other thing. I think like we might have a thing where like this, like the effects of like other things, like I think it's more going to be the effects of the campaign of the Witch Queen, where like this other race like just got the light now, and like what the heck is up with that? And I think it's going to be more of like, I think the seasons might be more wrapped around that reaction, or like the reaction of like knowing like the witness is coming for us and like coming to our solar system, and like we know that aspect. So maybe it's like going to be more of like a people either in the Vanguard or other races of characters we've met previously, will, or maybe gonna like join forces with them to like figure out what their plans are to like prepare for this or something.
For
It's just,
sure.
it's pretty wide open right now, so I'm curious.
The season definitely has leaned more into like actually developing more characters and stuff, which has been
Yeah,
great. Like Saladin, the Iron Banner guy, is like a big central character. Crow is a big central character,
yeah,
and Zavala is a big central character of the season, which were like the three that didn't get as much attention in the campaign.
right.
So it's just it's really it's like they're hitting on both fronts, and
Yeah,
they're making the characters way more into like Ikora is like so good in the Witch Queen campaign. Like I
yeah,
really like
mm-hmm.
Ikora just to begin with, but like she goes through doubts. We see her struggle, and then we see her like outmaneuver Savathun, and
Yeah,
it feels great when we get there. And in a similar way, like we see Keitel and Zavala and Saladin and Crow all like having these really interesting conversations throughout season the Risen so far that I've just adored.
yeah,
Especially there's a great scene, backstory scene with Saladin that is just absolutely stellar.
yeah, yeah. I definitely that there's a really good backstory cutscene where we see like kind of him trying to teach a lesson to Crow, and Crow still kind of like being in this weird like for a lack of a better term, he's kind of in an emo like
Yeah,
angsty
he's in his
teenager
adolescence.
phase. Like it's like because he against for the season before Witch Queen launched, like Crow was originally Uldrensov, the brother to Marasov, who is like she's the queen of the Awoken race, and like he also was like the murderer of one of our Vanguard leaders back in Forsaken, but then he was revived as a guardian, and he did not have those memories until that season where Savathun gave him all those memories back. So he's like dealing with those memories of like actually knowing who he was in his past life, which most guardians don't really have. But also like now he's like, but he still kind of wants to be Crow and be like a guardian and like continue to help humanity, and he's still trying to like learn those ropes. And it's kind of interesting to see like Zavala and Saladin like take the role of like
Mentor
his like a
figure.
mentor
Yeah.
figure, because like those were the characters I was not expecting to be the mentors to him. And I think that's interesting of like Saladin, who's definitely like he's an old war dog like style character, and he's has a very rigid mentality to things, where he straight up talks about crushing the skulls of the hive, and like and then we have
He's killed ghosts before, right? Like
yeah,
people's
and
ghosts,
he's killed people's
like
ghosts, and he's had to do things he's not proud of, and he's very much like that very style of figure, where you have Crow, who's like a little bit more innocent, or more I guess innocent maybe is not the exact term, but like I guess he's a little bit more empathetic to like hey, maybe having these scions like essentially like torture
mind freak these
torture
guardians.
these like hive guardians who were just trying to like like join the light and also like fight against this evil thing. Maybe it's not so bad. I don't know yet. Like we don't know. Maybe we shouldn't just jump to like this is they're immediately like the worst thing on the planet kind of mentality. And like obviously like Zavala and Saladin being who they are and having gone through their experiences, like they're just like, no, we're not the sky. Like we're doing what we gotta do. We need to do this. We need to this is what we need to do to survive. And like that's like their mentality, right? So it's like interesting. So like I'm interested to see like how they evolve this stuff.
There's also like Callus stuff that they're setting up with this
Oh
season.
my
Like
god,
there's just so
our
much,
boy's coming
like
home.
yeah, Callus is definitely
Yes.
like we know what a disciple of the witness looks and feels like now, and now we know like that trajectory for someone like Callus, who's the first raid boss in Destiny 2. Like it's so exciting to see what they're setting up with him. So
yes, I can't wait to see what the future holds for Destiny 2 and its seasons. And like really it's not that far off, because I think the next season starts at the end of May.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we will be here to cover it.
Mm-hmm.
But not only cover it for Irrational Passions, but in a brand new way, Alex O'Neill.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Subsidiaries left and right.
Subsidiaries is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
We're not done with Destiny content is basically what we're saying here, because I and also Alex as well, we're going to be launching pretty much around, if not like the same time this review discussion goes up, Helm to Tower.
bringing it back.
Yeah,
If for folks that listen to Farm to Tower.
Yeah, Farm to Tower. I asked Alex, I was just like, hey, Farm to Tower had a good name to it, but it's obviously like the farm's like dead.
The farm's gone. The farm got sunset.
But there is the Helm, and Helm to Tower sounds pretty cool too. And it's like, is it cool if I use this name? Because I technically was not there, but we're kind of, it's kind of a successor to the Destiny coverage of yore that Irrational Passions once did in the form of a like side YouTube channels. So that way, when you come to our YouTube channel like it is right now, and you see like 10 Destiny videos in a row, it's like, oh, that's interesting.
They'll have their own dedicated place for it now.
Now you'll be able to go to YouTube, this YouTube channel, which will be linked down below. YouTube.com. I don't think we can have /Helm to Tower just yet, but
not yet, no.
You'll be able to go to that link below and check out focused Destiny coverage from me and from Alex. It'll be an array of things. It'll, some of the first videos you'll see will be more like, I won't be getting deep into the weeds of some of the discussions we had here today. It'll kind of be starting at a pretty basic level for the first couple of videos of like, hey, where the heck is Destiny right now in 2022? I maybe have played it before, or I've not played it at all, and kind of want to get into it. I'm seeing people talk about like how this is like the best Destiny's ever been, and the Witch Queen and all this stuff. So I wanted to make a couple videos as somebody who's like now has, I have not checked the most recently, but I'm probably over 2,000, maybe even closer to 2,500 hours into this game now. These days, I play a lot of the end of most end game content in this game, and kind of do a little bit of everything. So I kind of want to. So I will have some. I think there will be a lot more focus on that style of content in the future. But for the first couple of videos, you'll see like, hey, if you just want to jump in and start playing Destiny, here's some info for you. Here's some like basic mechanics of like, here's how these weird mods work that you're unlocking on a seasonal artifact, and like, what do these even do? What do these even mean? Here, like, maybe I go to this destination and this weird thing is going on, and what the heck does this even mean? Like, I just wanted to make some basic stuff that maybe like people who've been playing Destiny for years, like, yeah, they already know this stuff. They've played this stuff to death. But there's still plenty of people who are brand new to the franchise and just want to check it out.
Yeah, and my stuff I plan on doing is like, if you've watched Destiny YouTube content before, might be some familiar stuff like build videos or guides or stuff like that. And we'll see like where that goes in the future. But like that's the stuff that I like to interact with, and I definitely like talking to other Destiny creators. And I think that is definitely a thing I will be trying to do is bring in some of the Destiny names you might know, and talking about Destiny with them and stuff like that, and getting build stuff and just like, it can be really intimidating if you don't know what works with what and what to get and stuff like that. So that the hope is to have something that is both good for longtime fans of Destiny and also good for new time fans of Destiny.
Yeah, 100%. And we'll doing like some other stuff too. Like, I don't want to say like Farm to Tower was a Destiny podcast. I don't want to fully commit both of us to another regular
podcast,
scheduled podcast that we have to record. But that does not necessarily mean we won't have like more longer form discussions. Like we've both already talked about, like, what is the like the next few seasons of Destiny, like what are our ideas or predictions for that stuff. We will probably have a video like that pretty soon, which will be a little bit more in a podcast-esque form, but it won't necessarily mean that we're doing
it's not going to be the only
every week or every week or something like that. I'll probably also maybe dabble in stuff like, hey, there's sometimes there's a lot of communication on like various Destiny social medias, like the Reddits or the Twitters or like weekly blogs where they drop Destiny news and information like people would like would be helpful for people to know. I'll probably try and maybe do a video where I collect some of that info each week and throw it up and make sure people have that stuff. There'll be a bunch of stuff is basically what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Just like, so when you come to Irrational Passions, youtube.com Irrational Passions, you'll still get a lot of the stuff we're always doing. Like, we get the viewpoints videos, review discussions like this for other video games, Nintendo podcasts we have as well, and other whatever else we end up doing here on the channel is that. And then if you want to see our more focused week to week Destiny style coverage, check out Helm to Tower.
Yeah, similar if you listen to IPD&D, like that's kind of its own thing.
Correct.
On irrationalpassions.com that is not going to bleed over necessarily into the other stuff, but
correct.
If you it's there, you know.
Yeah, and like Scott's podcast, RPG
University.
It'll just be in that same of it'll be like you said, a Rational Passion subsidiary.
Another pillar.
It'll be a branch off to the side where we can kind of feed our destiny addictions and keep talking about it and not overtake what we got going on. But yeah, Destiny 2, the Witch Queen, I feel pretty
safe to say we like it.
Safe to say we like it a whole lot. It's some of the best Destiny that has been in many I would say in a few years, frankly, and that's even coming from somebody who liked like the last. I liked Beyond Light a lot. I think that was a cool.
I like Shadowkeep still, but
Shadowkeep was still pretty fun. Like some of the seasonal
this makes
stuff.
Shadowkeep look like nothing.
Yes, it does. Like it makes it look like it makes both of those expansions look just like a lower experience. Because this like they just set the bar so high and like made such a stellar package of like new Destiny stuff. And I can't wait to see because it feels like we're just gonna be going up and up from here.
Yeah, it feels like we're just getting started, and like this is the beginning of the end game, you know.
Yeah.
And it like I'm just so stoked.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great time to be a Destiny fan. That's gonna do it for this review discussion. Thanks everybody again for letting us.
Sorry, it was 2 hours.
It shouldn't be surprised.
It happens sometimes.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a surprise by now. Sometimes when we get
there's a lot to talk about,
like
you know.
That. There's a lot to talk about, and there's still like stuff we really could have talked even longer about. I feel like it's crazy, but yeah. Again, check out if you like this. You know, leave us a rate. If you listen to us on podcast services, leave us a rating. We'd appreciate it. Or you know, if you watch it on YouTube, you know, let us leave a comment or let us know what you think. Always appreciated to let us know what you think of our stuff. Again, feel free if you came here to just because it's a Destiny thing, feel free to go check out Helm to Tower and subscribe there, or subscribe here. We're gonna be doing plenty of normal Irrational Passion stuff. Thanks.
Check out Nintendo Land. My host that's more if you like more of us, then
more
you can get
of
it there.
Us. We're there. We're all over here. But thanks everybody for watching or listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.